We were all promised this incredible future powered by blockchain, right? So why does it feel like we're stuck in the world's worst digital traffic jam? Today, we're going to unpack blockchain's biggest bottleneck, the scaling problem, and talk about the ingenious fix designed to clear the road, Layer 2.
All right, before we dive in, just a quick heads up. This explainer on the Blockspawn's Funds channel is put together for educational and informational purposes only. It is definitely not financial or investment advice.
I mean, the whole idea was revolutionary, wasn't it? Lightning fast, decentralized transactions that would change everything.
So what happened? Why can't they keep up? Why does trying to use a popular network sometimes feel like you're wading through digital molasses? The truth is, they're becoming
Painfully slow. We're talking minutes, sometimes even longer, just to get a single transaction confirmed when things get busy. And oh boy, expensive. When demand spikes, those transaction fees, the gas, they just go through the roof. You can end up in a ridiculous situation where the fee to send money costs more than the money you're actually sending.
And what that all boils down to is this: they're just not scalable enough for the real world. Not yet, anyway. There's really only one fix that can handle the kind of volume we're talking about, and that's Layer 2. So let's talk about this great traffic jam. To really get why Layer 2 is such a game changer, you first have to understand why the jam happens in the first place. It goes right back to the core design of the blockchain itself.
The easiest way to think about a blockchain like Ethereum is to picture a single-lane highway. It was built to be incredibly secure, which is great, but it can only handle so many cars, or in this case, transactions at one time. So what happens when everyone wants to get on the highway at once? You get gridlock. You might remember the whole CryptoKitties craze back in 2017. It was just one popular app, but it was so popular it literally ground the entire Ethereum network to a screeching halt. And here's the thing. This congestion, this slowdown, it isn't really a bug. It's actually a built-in feature of a huge engineering challenge that every single blockchain has to deal with. It's famously known as the Blockchain Trilemma. The trilemma basically says you have three goals you're always trying to achieve. 1, decentralization, so no one person or company's in charge. 2, security, so the network is rock solid and can't be attacked. And 3, scalability, so it can handle a massive amount of traffic really, really fast. But here's the catch. You can have 2, but you can't have all 3, at least not perfectly. Blockchains like Bitcoin and Ethereum, they chose to focus on decentralization and security, and that choice, by definition, put a cap on their scalability. Which, of course, leads us to the billion-dollar question. How do you add more lanes to this highway without tearing up the very foundation of security and decentralization that makes it so valuable to begin with?
And this is where the genius of Layer 2 comes into play. Instead of this massive, risky project of trying to rebuild the main highway from scratch, developers had a much smarter idea. What if we just built a super fast express lane right on top of it? So here's the core concept. Layer 2 solutions take all the heavy lifting, all that intense transaction processing, and they move it off the main chain. They do all the work in their own separate environment. And then, once it's all done, they just post the final results back down to the main Layer 1 to keep it secure. It's kind of like doing all your messy calculations on a separate piece of paper, and then only writing the final clean answer in your official notebook.
Okay, so how does this actually work under the hood? Well, the most popular and dominant type of Layer 2 technology out there today is something called a rollup. And the name pretty much says it all. A rollup takes hundreds, sometimes even thousands of individual transactions, and it bundles or rolls them up into a single, highly compressed batch of data. Then it submits that one piece of data to the Layer 1 chain. So the main network doesn't have to process 1,000 different things, it only has to process one. The savings on fees and time are just absolutely massive. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, because not all rollups are created equal. You've basically got two main flavors. First, you have optimistic rollups. They're called optimistic because they just assume every transaction in the batch is valid and posted. Then there's a waiting period, like a week, where anyone can check the work and challenge it if they find fraud. On the other side, you have ZK rollups. These things are kind of like magic. They use some seriously advanced math to generate something called a proof that mathematically guarantees every single transaction is valid without revealing any private details. This means there's no waiting period. You get instant finality. And hey, while rollups are definitely getting most of the spotlight right now, they're not the only game in town. You've also got things like sidechains, think Polygon, which are basically separate blockchains that run in parallel to the main one.
And then you have state channels, like the famous Lightning Network for Bitcoin, which open up private payment channels between users for super fast, cheap transactions. So let's zoom out for a second and look at the big picture, because this is so much more than just a cool tech fix. Layer 2 isn't just an upgrade. It's a totally new way of thinking about how blockchains can grow to a global scale. For anyone who actually uses these networks, the difference is just night and day. We go from a process that was slow, clunky, and expensive to one that's nearly instant and costs pennies. It finally makes using a decentralized app feel as smooth and easy as using any other app on your phone.
Look, at the end of the day, Layer 2 is the bridge that takes blockchain from this cool niche potential to actual real-world mainstream use. It's the engine that makes things like decentralized finance, NFT gaming, and all these futuristic dApps actually practical for millions and, one day, billions of people. This is what's going to power that next big wave.
So what we're really watching here is the natural evolution of a powerful technology. You start with a super secure, decentralized base, that's layer 1, and then you build new layers on top to add speed, new features, and new possibilities. This is how the technology grows up, layer by layer, without breaking the amazing foundation it's built on.
Which leaves us with a pretty exciting final thought, right? Now that Layer 2 is tackling the whole speed and cost problem, what's the next big mountain to climb? Because you can bet that things like user experience, privacy, and getting all these different layers to talk to each other, well, the builders are already hard at work on what's next. The innovation just never stops.